having me here, but I did want to fill in a little bit of information. You asked me why at age 65 would I start something new, and the real motivation comes from my wife, who made it clear when I was reaching the retirement age at the Wall Street Journal that the first time she found me dressed in sweatpants at 10:30 in the morning of a weekday, that it was not going to be divorce, it was going to be murder.
So you're already condemned.
I knew I had to find something outside the house to do. ProPublica fits what for me is a passion, which is to use the techniques of journalism to uncover and publicize information that enables the public to spot examples of abuse of power and failure to uphold the public interest, and gives them the information to make change. So that's what we're trying to accomplish. You mentioned the California nurses, the dollars for docs, but this has also happened in other areas. For example, one of our reporters spent nearly 2 years digging into the way the energy companies in the U.S. are finding new resources of natural gas, which, as you all know, is a very desirable fuel because it burns relatively cleanly, and there are large supplies in the U.S. But the problem that our reporter found is that if one is not very careful with the large amounts of water that are used to pump miles down under the earth to fracture the rock and send the gas up to the surface, if one's not very careful with that water when it comes back to the surface, because it's full of pollution, that the pollution can get into the water supply. And this was something that was being ignored by the industry, which had an exemption from federal regulation, and our reporter brought this to the attention of the public in many U.S. states, and in the next energy bill, there would be an effort to remedy that problem. Another example is the workers who are used who are employed to support U.S. Troops in places like Afghanistan, where they do things like build roads and drive trucks and clean buildings and so on, and they are vulnerable to bombs and enemy fire, and just like soldiers are. And under a 1944 U.S. law, they're supposed to be protected if they have injuries that require medical treatment. The treatment is supposed to be covered, and if they're killed, their families are supposed to receive the same kind of death benefits that a U.S. soldier would receive. And a bunch of American companies went in, insurance companies went in and bid on this business, but then they didn't pay the benefits. And our reporter found, examples of, families in Bangladesh or the Philippines or in rural America that were supposed to be getting insurance benefits, and they weren't getting them. As a result of those, as a result of those stories, the Congress and the government agencies responsible for monitoring that program have drastically improved it. So there are things that we can do with journalism that make the working of government and business better.
I'm sure the audience is mostly composed of journalists and media professionals, so I'm sure it's safe to say that most people in this room would have liked participate in writing one of these stories. But as a professional, how are your stories received by the media? Because it's like a gift from the sky, from the. You mentioned that a reporter worked 2 years over one story. How is it possible?
No, this wasn't one story. This was 55 stories on the same topic, but with partners, because this goes on in 30 different U.S. states, with partners in many different states, but still, it was a substantial investment focused on the same topic.
And how does the newsroom receive your work? I mean, when we receive a call from Publica, hey, we've got a scoop for you. I mean, how do we react?
Well, you know, it has developed over time. I mean, I think when we got started, there was a certain reaction of, who are these guys? And does this threaten my job?
Yeah.
But I think as time has gone on, the answer to who are these guys, it's an organization that we can trust. And we seek to gain that trust by being scrupulously accurate in what we report. When we do make mistakes, to fix them instantly. And also by opening our processes to the partners we work with, so that their editors can know our sources, their lawyers can know our sources. We ask the editors not to tell reporters who the sources are, because we don't want a reporter saying, calling up a source and saying, why did you talk to them and not talk to us? But otherwise, our entire process is open.
It's a deep partnership. It's not just a freebie.
It is a very deep partnership, really as deep as the collaborating organization wants it to be. And you know, this is not for every story we do. The bulk of our stories, the shorter ones, just go straight up on our website. It's only the deepest, potentially highest impact stories that we take to partners, I think what's happened over time is that people at other news organizations are less threatened when their newspaper or television or radio or website uses one of our stories, because they recognize that this is only going to happen a few times a year, if that, and so it doesn't threaten their life.
Their line of news.